All right, we're gonna see Myron School Blue Pill Simp on the reality about women. This guy's like a renowned fascist, known to be racist, known to be misogynistic, and he thinks he's helping men because he gets a couple texts saying he's doing good by them. Um, People like this need to be humbled. Let's see what he's got.
Less superior than men or only physically?
Well, the thing is this, we think differently. And since we think differently, that is gonna obviously change the way that we view the world. So for example, women tend to be more communitarian. They yearn for security. Why is that? Because they're physically weaker than men.
You're saying that it's women overall, and you're saying that's affecting their decisions as individuals when that doesn't apply to all women necessarily. That doesn't make them mentally less capable of understanding the situation.
When I say
okay,
women, I mean in general. It's never gonna be all.
Yes.
Nothing is ever gonna be all. There's always gonna be exceptions. Are there women out there that are brilliant, that have, a 150 IQ, that are astrophysicists, whatever? Sure,
Okay.
sure. But for every one of them, there's gonna be 10 men that can do the same.
So I think a lot of the reasons people have like not being able to, beat you in a debate, like I don't want to be here to beat you. I'm here to understand kind of some of your points. Because I think you have really strong reasoning, but the problem is like your conclusions, you're taking overgeneralizations and then making them an individual person's problem, when really it's a systemic issue and not something that a lot of people have control of. Like, for example, women's equality, you're saying women don't want to be in positions of power, when really it's a systemic issue of them historically not having the opportunity of a position of power. You know what I mean?
I would argue they have way more opportunity than ever before.
You mean right now or historically?
Yeah, than right now, yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. So I want to know, do you think women are mentally less superior than men or only physically?
Well, the thing is this, we think differently, okay? And since we think differently, that is gonna obviously change the way that we view the world. So for example, women tend to be more communitarian, right? They yearn for security. Why is that? Because they're physically weaker than men. So the collective is very important to them. This is why they tend to vote Democrat. This is why they tend to be more socialist. This is why they tend to look for social programs, social welfare programs, versus men tend to be more, in reality, about meritocracy. And you gotta go out there and get it yourself, right? So that obviously applies itself to the way that women vote or view the world or whatever. Now, there's some women out there that might look at meritocracy better. These women tend to have, a stronger father in place, or maybe they're strong masculine.
Could you define meritocracy?
background.
I don't know what that means.
Like basically like a pecking order, like 1, 2, 3. So like, Tom, you did the best, you get paid $10. You did second best, you get $8. So like men understand dominance hierarchies, right?
Sure.
Like when you play pickup basketball,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
I get pick first, you get ball first, cool. So men go ahead and pick, all right, I'm taking him first. Like we understand this because we compete all the time.
Yeah.
Women don't really operate that way. Like, and they showed this with like kids. When little kids play, girls, they do hopscotch, jump rope, patty cake, games that don't play dolls, games that don't really have a definitive winner. With boys, they play things where there's competition because it's in our nature.
Okay, all right. Can I say this? I think the problem with that is you're saying women don't operate that way as a statement that's overarching all women, when it's really a statement that
Okay,
applies
this
to
is,
some.
we gotta operate
It applies to
generalities.
some. I think
generalities.
you're taking-
In general, women don't have the same proclivity to understand and respect meritocracy to the same degree that men do, because we live in it. They participate in it when they want. We must be in it whether we like it or not. We must compete. They don't have to.
I think that's true, and I think that must comes from, a historical problem, but I think it's still systematic, because you're saying that it's women overall, and you're saying that's affecting their decisions as individuals, when that doesn't apply to all women necessarily. That's just something that might happen sometimes, and you can see a situation where, okay, this woman doesn't understand the pecking order of a basketball game. Maybe it's because they're too short to play basketball. Obviously, they can't play basketball. They don't have that choice. They're physically less superior. But that doesn't make them mentally less capable of understanding the situation. You know what I mean?
Not really. They make a
don't think
lot of
so?
emotional arguments. You've seen the women that came on here. What did they say?
I think it was emotional because you were really good at making people angry by overgeneralizing and then making it a personal problem.
Perfect. Notice how even the men, when I triggered them, they were able to somewhat articulate their grievances, but with the women, they're not. You guys caught on to that? So every time one of the women walk by, hey, what's your problem? They can never actually articulate what the problem is, right?
Okay.
All they heard was something that they didn't like, triggered, and they didn't like the way I made them feel, but they don't even remember what I said. But with the men, a lot of the times, they get mad or they might get triggered, but they're at least able to recite back to me what triggered them. That's a fundamental difference between men and women.
And do you think that's something that applies to all women across the earth, or
Of
just
course
the ones
not.
you've talked
But
to
women
today?
are more emotional than men are.
You could say that generally, but I don't think you can say that as an overarching statement for all women, period. I think
I never said all.
I think you can.
I never
you
said
do
all.
say women, and then you never say some.
Okay.
You never say
This is the
most, you
IQ
just
test
say
again.
women.
When I
IQ,
say
okay,
women,
let's
I
go.
mean in general. It's never going to be all.
When you argue with a lot of these men, the issue that a lot of them have is that oftentimes we can't get past the single word algorithm, which a lot of the times, like saying alligator at a door would allow the door to open. And that door opening would allow you access to what we would understand as a true intellectual discussion. A lot of people don't want to get past that door. They try to nitpick little words to call you dumb. They'll ask for the definition of the word to make you feel dumb. But really, in situations like that, they're just proving their own ignorance. Because again, when you're trying to have a discussion about science or a generalization of what is happening or occurring, this person would say, the weather shows that it's going to rain. It's raining today. It's raining cats and dogs, but then they'll get stuck on the fact that it's not a cat or a dog, and they'll say it didn't rain everywhere. So once they get past the very basic metaphor, they'll talk about, well, it's still not raining everywhere. And that's not the whole point. The point is that you're supposed to, in character and in understanding the discussion, know that in some places this happens, in some places does not. This is a cultural perspective that oftentimes builds itself upon the idea that each place has its own security and perimeter of understanding reality, and these people will operate this way. It's like denying conservatives exist, but conservatives still exist. And then the person that says the majority are progressives is now the one saying, yeah, but there are still conservatives. A lot of these people get stuck on the woke scold, know the word or not, and then they go for the easy people or the easy women or the easy men to hang out with to validate their being or what it means to be intelligent to them. They are not actually intelligent people. This is why a lot of the times people like Myron get away with proving these guys are dumb or silly, because once again, they're not very intelligible in the conversation. And anytime they're trying to conversate with them, they feel like they have to constantly prove they're dumb by a single word analysis. This is one of the traps they come into a lot of the time during debates or discussions where the general majority of people aren't going to see this guy saying you don't know the word, or you said some but not all, is not going to win all the time. It's not going to work all the time, because a lot of the time people are going to, which I'm doing it again, a lot of the time, these people are going to push often into a degree of which a lot of them are going to try and establish themselves as intellectually how do you say, generally smart, which a lot of the times these men are not prepared for. So you have to get past the alligator. You have to get past the door code word in order to have a true intellectual discussion.
Nothing is ever going to be all. There's always going to be exceptions. Are there women out there that are brilliant, that have, a 150 IQ, that are, astrophysicists, whatever? Sure.
Okay.
Sure. But for every one of them, there's going to be 10 men that can do the same.
Do you think this has anything to do with the way that they're raised and the way that culture makes people raise people? Like in America, there's a lot different system of a family than I don't know the culture of another country.
I would argue
to
we
be
encourage
more
women to
caretakers.
attend school and become just like men and pursue a
that's true.
career, and yet they still aren't involved in certain things. So like
don't
I would
think that's
argue that
true.
women are totally encouraged to go and get you know what? Women are more encouraged to go to college and get a career than have a family nowadays. So it's actually the opposite.
You really think that's true?
Absolutely.
Because I think throughout American history, almost every
I'm
form of
talking
media.
about now.
Well, right
now,
now, even in media,
right now,
women are still raised
if
as
a
kind
woman
of
was to drop
caretaker
out of
because
school
people like
and have a
you
family,
identifying like that.
most other females would look at her as a failure.
Wait, can you say that one more time? I couldn't. There's people talking about me.
I said, if a woman was, let's say a woman was in college,
Yeah.
and she dropped out to have a family, her female peers would probably look at her as a loser. Like, motherhood is no longer respected. That's why birth rates are so low. That's why women pursue
that's a
education.
assumption that doesn't really apply to anything that's happened. I've never heard of that happening ever. You know what I mean?
Okay, there's more women. I wrote a book on this. Why I'm Deserve Even Less, by the way.
Really?
Make sure to
Okay.
go get it.
Big author.
Women prioritize traveling, having fun, partying, going to school, and getting a career nowadays far more than having a family. Like having a family and finding guys like in 7th place in a woman's hierarchy of needs nowadays, or wants.
Okay, so you're still standing by the claim that women are biologically mentally less superior, not because of a culture or in a way they're raised or a particular.
I mean,
piece of
there's some
systemic
biological
issue.
differences that influence
I think
their decision making.
I think the biological difference are restricted to physicality, and then the mental things are problems of a systemic, cultural tradition.
No, because women dominate college attendance and they dominate higher education, yet men are still overrepresented in STEM.
I mean, I guess so, but that's just the way it's been for a long time. It's kind of hard to just to have like where are the women supposed to just all of a sudden like take over and be 50-50? Like that's not realistic. You know what I mean? But
Well,
I think it's real. What's realistic is saying that they are capable.
The thing is
and not
that
saying they're biologically less superior.
Okay, you could look at like the Scandinavian countries, for example. They're even more egalitarian than we are. What ends up happening is women still go into the same job fields
Sorry,
typically.
I don't know the word egalitarian. What does that mean?
Equality, basically, like in an equal society.
Okay.
It's the concept of equality.
That's in Scandinavia?
Yeah, so in Scandinavia, like those countries which are far more progressive than we are, right? They're like 10, 15 years ahead of us.
Sure.
Women, pretty much are in the workplace, everything else like that. Women still go into job fields that women dominate more over there. So even when women are educated, they still go into job fields that tend to deal with people, social work, etc. And then men tend to go into job fields that men typically want, right? Women are interested in people, men are interested in things. It's just a biological difference. And those biological differences do shape how we perceive the world and what we go into later on.
Okay, I think that's true. I think it's fair to say that biological differences lead to, decisions in individual decisions. Like a woman is more likely to be maternal and more likely to want to take care of kids and work in a daycare. But if a woman does want to work in STEM or, do mechanical engineering or something like that, I don't think there's anything mentally making them less superior able to do that.
Again, there's exceptions to the rule. I just explained that. I explained that to you. I said, for every one woman that's brilliant, right, that like has a 150 IQ, there's going to be 10 men that have that same level of IQ. Does that make sense? Do you think that's
biological? That you don't think that has anything to do with the system or like the way that culture is, traditionalized in America?
Men typically tend to be on the more extreme side. So there's more genius men, right, than women, but there's also more men than women. So we dominate both spectrums of the side of the
Wait. Say that.
equation.
Can you say that one more time? There's more genius men and more men?
Yeah, so we dominate both sides. So most geniuses are men.
Most geniuses are men, okay.
Yes, but also on the negative side, most are also men.
So where do you think the women fall in that equation?
They're kind of a little bit more in the middle or so?
They're just like
they're kind of more in the middle. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the people that push the needle for society are the geniuses, and those are the men.
I mean, I guess, but I don't.
I think what Myron is trying to say is that the mediocrity of our society comes from the women, and that the geniuses of men are oftentimes split completely. So where that if you were a mediocre man, you'll be compared to a woman. And so therefore your womanhood or your femininity is oftentimes associated with inferiority because you're either a complete moron, which would now be the labor force or the simplistic people, or you would be one of the people that of which are associated with the pure geniuses of the richest of society, leading one of the greatest inventions or one of the wealthiest people on the planet. And if you fall toward the middle where you're mediocre, you will now be seen as a woman, which in the perspective of a patriarchy or the misogynist would oftentimes be at the bottom, because now the most simple men are the labor, and most labor is conducted by men, labor is needed, and the people who lead are the ones that are which are intelligent enough to make the money and exploit people. But the women are oftentimes the ones waiting to pick either the laborer or the man who which is leading. And of course, what this gentleman here is trying to discuss against Myron is discussing exactly that if you're traditional and you're putting a culture of tradition, you are waiting to be picked by either the labor or the people of which are leading. Now, oftentimes, a lot of people misassociate this with inferiority. However, it is forced upon the women and the men that are in the mediocre sphere, because the mediocre sphere is now consistent with what he would call simp men or soy boys, or men of which respect women. And if you respect a woman, you must be a moron. But geniuses respect women, and laborers respect women, and people who are mediocre are still there. And he claims it's the smallest number of men, but they're still in the mediocre lane, which is still respecting women, which of course takes a lot of discussion and understanding of how the hierarchies that were here in place oftentimes intentionally teamed up on women 10 to 1 or 100 to 1 woman just to make sure that she was dumb or she would not get the proper conclusion in order to sabotage her in her teachings and understandings of her reality, which of course her reality is going to be subjugated to a lot of these men's oppression and pushing her down to a position of which they deem as acceptable and not one she deems as acceptable.
I don't think that's biological.
It is.
I mean, you can stand on that point, but I still think you're overgeneralizing the statement and making it into something that it's not by making it an individual conclusion of a generalized statement. So I mean, I did actually enjoy that conversation. I don't think
do
there's
you
anywhere
guys
else
get
to
it?
go.
I don't know, man. It's just like, dude,
mean,
look, I don't know if
feel
some
like
girls
this
in the
is part of
crowd
the
that you want something like, and you're trying to, put
up?
the cape on. I said,
up?
I don't know if there's like a girl in the crowd that you're trying to have with, and like, hey, baby, I'm gonna fight this guy for you.
I'm not worried about the people in this crowd.
But like, the fact that you don't understand like the basic concept that like men and women are different, and that absolutely influences the way that we view the world, which then also influences what job fields we go into and how we perceive things. Like, this is just the truth, and it's been shown in many different ways. Like I said, with using Scandinavian countries, whatever, men and women are different. Does that mean that there are women that could do what men do and can be geniuses and rocket scientists? Sure, but there's not enough of them to go around. That's my point. If we had to rely on female ingenuity only, we'd be.
All right, well, I think that's all I need to hear from the argument, because I do understand your point. I don't think we can come to an agreement, obviously, but I appreciate the conversation. I think that was pretty productive, so thank you.
Who's up next?
A lot of the cop-outs he does with you just want to sleep with women doesn't work. A lot of these men who do actually fight for these women are not actually going to be going around saying, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see that? And then they're hoping for a chance to sleep with them. I know it's hard for Myron to understand, but you still have to date women. You still have to conversate with them. You still have to get to know the person. So a lot of the times these guys are preaching to people that are, as he says, simple, but oftentimes the women they go for are also simple. I don't think he owned them per se. I think that man made a decent-ish conversation point, which is that it's a traditional and systemic issue that pushes women down. A lot of those people do not get the credit they deserve, which of course is going to come from a lot of people they see as privileged, or oftentimes already got their life figured out. These are college kids. A lot of them are going to end up very wealthy and doing great for themselves. People who never get their degree are probably just ignored like they're subhuman fodder. So the person he's talking to is probably going to end up doing just fine for himself. So society's built for people like Myron and that guy who was asking the questions, because both of those men would be considered geniuses. They use their brain to make money. Myron talks about stuff, writes books. The other guy is going to college to get his degree. These people take advantage of the fact the majority of people don't have that privilege and try to talk down on them. So, or again, the society has multiple cultures. Imagine it like a circle. This circle has multiple different sectors in it. Conservatism or conservative nature is the majority of them, because if it was not, we wouldn't have segregated neighborhoods or a bunch of racial hate crimes going on, and protests, and women's rights being fought for, and rapes being ignored. So if you understand what this society is made for systemically, it is for the conservative patriarchy, not for men who fight back for women, not for the women who defend the men who fight back for women, but rather for the conservative white men and the white men they date. It is mainly a white society after all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you guys next time.